Jake and Mitch.
Actions speak louder than words, and the Democrats have emphatically defined themselves as the group of people that truly wants to put Americans last. Welcome to the Jake and Mitch show, guys. We have some jaw-dropping and hard-hitting topics to talk about in American landscape, what's going on with Trump's congressional address, and seeing where the Democrats are landing right now societally in America, and what kind of dumpster fire we're dealing with. So, Jeff, man, let's let you jump into it, man. What do you got, dude? Like, what's been going on in America, bro?
Well, I think everything was pretty much solidified and put into a nice little box for us to understand who the Democrats are after watching the address the other night. I think that's number one.
Yeah.
What a poor show for our country. We'll get into that. What a poor show for the females in the Democratic Party and what they tried representing. We'll get into that, especially coming after the transgender and sports and voting it down. I just think there's so many things that are disgust you at the end of the day, right? But you look at Joe Biden's, Department of Education spending all the way down to, what about the auto pen now? What's going to happen with the auto pen? That is big news. And people say, well, it's just an auto pen and presidents do it all the time. I'm going to tell you, that's going to become very, very big news, especially right now that you have Cash and Pam Bondi looking into it. So just a lot of things. Looking forward to the show, Jake, and ready to roll.
I mean, dude, like, talk about the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. One of the first things you saw this week, if you guys aren't tracking it, if you're cool with dudes that have dicks and they're playing in girls' sports, I am going to call it the way it is. I did a reel on this week early on social media. You guys, the bill talking about blocking men from competing in competitive sports failed. It failed in the Senate at a vote of 51 to 45. Every single Democrat wants men to be playing in female sports. And the first argument that I get from Democrats, any liberal, is that's what you're going to focus on? Yeah, it's what I'm going to focus on, man, because I care about everybody. Let's just bring a little bit of common sense back to sports. And the fact that we have to bring this up as a topic, that I don't want a man to play. If I had a daughter playing in sports, that young girl that was at Trump's congressional address, and the girl that just got battered and beaten by a the athlete, the volleyball, the young girl, and she comes home with a busted up face, and now she can't even play anymore. I don't know, man, but every single Democrat, for the libbies, listen to this. The Democrats, you guys, this is your party. Like, bro, like, what is happening in the world? I don't understand.
I think the question needs to be asked, though. I went back and looked at the 51 Democrats who voted. I don't know. I don't know if you looked at the actual numbers and they broke it down.
I did.
If you look at the numbers, it's your states in New York and along the Eastern Seaboard and then the West Coast. Mm-hmm. The question needs to be asked here, local and state representatives, your local representatives for that matter. Why didn't you vote on it?
Yeah.
Why didn't you vote on it? Because you didn't vote on it. It means you were absent from that vote. You would have a serious problem in certain parts of this country if indeed you do have a Democrat who is your representative in Congress, that you flat out didn't vote. I think I think that's a bigger story than anything, because I'm looking at it's New York, Jersey, Vermont, California, Hawaii, Washington, Oregon. Where was the middle of the country?
Yeah.
Those are the things that are disappointing. And then on top of that, Jake, they purposely wore pink outfits. They purposely wore pink outfits as representation at the address, saying that they backed females. I mean, their female backing on this. That is an absolute gut punch to the female population in this world. If you think for a shadow of a minute that the Republicans and the Republican Party doesn't look out for the female population by naming March is Female History Month, right?
Yeah.
And all these other things that are going on right now, man, you're living underneath a rock. It's sad.
What I don't think people understand is you see the vote of 51 to 45 and people are like, I don't understand, why didn't it pass? Like, we had the majority of the Republicans vote for this, but what people don't understand is this topic of having transgender individuals in female sports, It has to do with filibustering, if you guys know much about law, but really in just how it works in the Senate and House. The Democrats have been doing is they've been filibustering. So they've basically been talking nonsense, trying to basically prolong the process of getting this bill pushed so men can't be in female sports anymore. And how this happened years and decades ago, but it's called invoking cloture. That's what it's called. And what that means is, in order to basically break through a filibuster like this, a hot heated topic of a bill that they're trying to push through, you have to have at least 60% of the vote in favor of a certain party. So when they went in to make this vote in the Senate, it was kind of under the impression that they had the votes to push it through. At the end of the day, they didn't. It was 51-45. So now it goes back into, or stays in, filibustering mode, and it goes nowhere. So what that really means, guys, is men are still going to be able to participate in female sports. And it's kind of just up in this entangled space right now. And that's where we're at. That's the landscape that we're at right now, which sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I'll say this. I think it's a shame. I think watching that whole address, and we'll get into more of that too, but that whole address and how they acted and in their representation, wearing pink and all that sort of thing. I don't know what they're trying to prove anymore. I think everybody, even if you're a Democrat, and I say it all the time, what normal, everyday 9-to-5 Democrat truly believes that they're being represented by something of good nature? It's shocking to me right now. And I think they're just pulling straws and pulling stuff right now just to try to figure out who what platform they stand on. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on right now.
Well, they're not the same. We talked about this last week. The Republican Party is no longer the Republican Party. They're identifying as Republicans. And I will tell you this, not many people have been talking about this, but watch this happen. The Democrat Party is not any longer the Democrat Party. They're what I call the off the reservation party. You saw, and we'll get in a little bit of this, when Charlie Kirk went on to speak with Gavin Newsom. Even the way Gavin Newsom was speaking, you can tell he's trying to fall into this moderate space, because maybe he could potentially run in 2028 or whenever, because it's looking like he could be a presidential candidate. But the idea here is that he even knows, and many others, even comedians like Stephen Colbert on his show, he just totally destroyed the Democrats on how they held themselves in the presidential congressional speech. It's getting nuts. So I don't think either party's the same, and that's why you're starting to see the fallout. But I want to kind of pick your brain on this with Zelensky. You saw the whole fallout with Zelensky last week. The liberals are losing their mind. And then only one day after having this conversation, Zelensky caved, right? He caved, and it came out to say that he stands to work under Trump's strong leadership. That is a quote from Zelensky, because he came out and he caved. And it's like, bro, we knew you would cave. If it's about the whole mineral thing, I mean, he literally begged for negotiation one day after to the Trump administration, and he said it was regrettable. Like that what happened had happened, in the context of not regrettable on how Trump behaved, but regrettable that, how he behaved, for 45 minutes before they kicked him out of the house, what actually cascaded from that whole event. So whatever, we knew he'd come around full circle, but.
Did you see the news yesterday?
Talk to me.
The news yesterday came back and said, I'm not going to negotiate anymore because Trump's sitting at the table with Putin again. At what point, and who is in his head? Then I read this morning that there are some Ukrainian lawmakers who are looking at impeachment at this point, because we're going to stop the war. We're going to stop the terrible deaths and everything that's going on in Ukraine. The day after he says all that, Jake, he says, well, never mind. I'm not going to negotiate with him anymore because he's sitting at the table with Putin.
Yeah.
And then you got lawmakers in the Ukraine saying, we got to look through our bylaws.
Yeah.
How do we get rid of this guy?
I mean, how would you feel being under martial law for 3.5, 4 years, man? I mean, it's getting insane. Bro, I've been to Ukraine. I've taught in Ukraine in the military. The Ukrainian government, their leadership, a lot of the senior leadership, bro, they are paid and bought for.
Sure.
Some of the most corrupt people that I've ever come across. It's the younger generation, I would say, like the 30, 40-year-olds, and even the younger military individuals like lieutenants and captains that are really trying to make a difference in that country. But I am telling you, they are bought and paid for. A lot of senior Ukrainian leadership, they are bought and paid off by Putin. And a lot of these guys are wearing the Ukrainian stars, and they're serving their country, but they are straight up bought off by Russia. And you can tell the way they talk, the way they carry themselves, like, I'm for Ukraine, but dude, they're all about Russia. 100%, dude. I literally spoke with these guys. They had these gestures for us, and they would, we're Americans and we're in their country. This is way back in 2016, 17. This is right before the invasions really started, where they called them the red separatists before this all started happening. And now you're seeing all of these things that are transpiring from the effects. But I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, because if Zelensky's a flip flop, I think someone, dude, it's who's pushing his buttons, who's going to tug his chain the hardest to be like, dude, you put up and shut up, dude. Just shut your mouth. Like, do if you want this deal to go through, stop fighting. Stop having people pay you billions of dollars for nothing in return.
Well, I think the whole system's broken in Ukraine too. They showed Saturday night in Ukraine last week in Kyiv. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a normal city during normal times, and you're talking about the younger population.
Yeah,
their nightclubs are full.
Yeah,
the folks of Ukraine, the younger generation of Ukraine right now, could give a flying rat's ass what's going on the outskirts of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes back to follow the dollar. What's the code here? Well, how many of their parents are sitting there being paid off by the Russians, right? So you're not going to say anything. We're going to go business as usual and act like life is just normal as hell.
I don't want to get into minutia about Zelensky, but I'll mention this last thing about him, how big of a phony this guy really is. If you guys want to check out, go on our episode from last week. And oh, by the way, guys, if you're listening to this show, the Jake and Mitch Show, and you like what you're hearing, please give us a like, a comment, share this video, guys. Share these podcasts, because we love to get the word out. If you guys enjoy it, man, give us a like. But I don't want to do too much in Zelensky anymore, but I do want to say that this dude's a phony, man. People don't understand. He comes into the Oval Office and people give him heck. Like the liberals are like, oh, what, just because he didn't have a suit on? Bro, you're going to see one of the most powerful men in the world. The president, you're the president of your country, and you can't even put a suit on. But it goes farther than that. And I'm just saying that because people don't understand how big of a phony Zelensky is, man. The guy was on front of Vanity Fair. At the Vanity Fair magazine, the guy was brought in. He was asked to be at the Oscars 3 years ago. All these phony events to bring this guy in, thinking this guy's some kind of world leader, and the fact that he can't wear a suit to see the most powerful man in the world, it blows my mind. All right, this guy's he's a phony, he's a fake. But did you hear about BlackRock buying the canal ports? Like, did you hear about that? And like, what's going? I mean, it was a $22.8 billion acquisition. BlackRock, everyone's freaking out, right? I mean, they own $11.5 trillion in assets. Guys, BlackRock owns virtually everything. I'm not a fan of BlackRock at all. But the idea was, with BlackRock buying Panama Canal ports, was to hand over command of the vital docks on both entrances of the canal to the U.S. to help with U.S. interests. Basically, costs of import-exports, right? So like last year, roughly 12,000 ships used the canal. That's how many ships. This is to give you guys an idea of what's going on, which connects almost 2,000 ports across 170 countries. And that's why it's so vital. And this was to give the U.S. control and try to take it away from Chinese interests. People will say it was controlled under China. That's not necessarily true, but to get it away from, I would say, Chinese influence. But it's interesting that it had to be BlackRock, because I feel like BlackRock is like the stepchild of just a lot. Like, they own everything. Like, there's nothing good that I feel like comes out of BlackRock.
Who was when Cheney was Bush's VP? Who was the big defense contractor who was in charge of cleaning up over in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Blackwater,
right? So,
yeah, Blackwater.
So it reminds you of a lot of that, right?
Yeah, it does.
Because everybody has their hand in the pocket, right? Let's just be honest. Let's be honest here. BlackRock going in and purchasing that canal, the both ports of the canal, which would be the west or the east and the west. Those two ports in the canal. That's taking control of that. First of all, what an absolute shit show that we sold it back to the Panamanian government for $1, right? To give them that. That was Jimmy Carter, and that was kind of his presidency. Him and Biden can go probably the top of the list right now on that. Yeah. But to have BlackRock have their fingerprints all over it, I agree with you. I think there's probably more to that than we know or we think about. But for me, it's someone came out and there was a huge article written about military ships from the United States get to go through the Panama Canal for free. Yeah. That's wonderful. Go check out a cruise ship tour through the Panama Canal, see how expensive that is. That's where they're making their money up on that, right? Yeah. We know that. But yeah, having their fingerprints on so many things is a little bit, doesn't feel right, does it?
No, because I've never heard good things. And here's the thing: when it comes to guys, when it comes to BlackRock acquisition, you can do a lot of research on it, but you won't find anything. It's always buried. So this is where I think the liberals and Democrats are going to have a hand up trying to kind of crucify Trump in this move, when really it comes down to helping U.S. interests. But even though it's coming down to U.S. interests, I think it's much more than that. It's more like, well, why BlackRock? Why not another entity? They just happen to be the company that can actually do it because they own everything.
Right.
But it's funny. This week I heard a lot more of those videos. You mentioned it last week. It's funny, kept coming up, but DC Drano actually put something out, and this is true because then I did some studying up on it. We talked about egg prices. The liberals are like, the prices aren't coming down because of whatever, dude. And all of a sudden, it's put out. In fact, they actually did a study on it that 150 million healthy chickens were killed under the Biden administration, and everyone wants to point the finger at Trump on why. Dude, I went into the grocery store 3 times this week. In Costco, couldn't find any eggs. 0. They have signs put up everywhere. And then I went to another grocery store. What was the store? Whole Foods, and another one too, another very organic store, to try to find eggs. Couldn't find any eggs. Signs everywhere. The only place I could find eggs this week was at Publix. And eggs were still like anywhere from $7 to $9 for a dozen, which is cheaper than what they used to be. But still, like a majority, I would say nearly 70% of the egg choices that are there are not there. And everyone wants to demonize Trump for the cost, when you're like, dude, Biden was the one that killed the chickens, and that's why you can't find any eggs. But yet they still try to like pigeonhole him as it's his fault.
How many weeks has Trump been in office?
Yeah, just 5 weeks?
5 weeks. It takes 22 weeks. We talked about this before. 22 weeks for a chicken to become old enough to lay eggs. You killed 100 and what'd you say? 20,
150 million healthy chickens.
Million chickens because of the threat of the bird flu.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, some of the things that Biden pulled off before he left, and quite frankly, Jake, do we even know that he pulled it off? Because now the auto pen thing's going into effect, and we'll talk about that.
Yes.
But how many things were signed off on? Probably while he was sleeping or in Delaware, right?
Exactly.
It just happened underneath his watch, and someone else made that decision for him. You have 150,000 chickens that you slaughter. Let's call it what it is.
150 million.
150 million chickens that you slaughter. 22 weeks for them to get of age to lay eggs. No shit, you're going to have an egg shortage.
I know, man. So
I mean, there's no doubt, and it's the most alarming thing in the world that it's in black and white. It's on social and it's in the newspaper mainstream, and people are still fighting back saying it's Trump's fault.
You can counteract, you can fight back every single liberal comment that they make. It's almost these kindergarten style, grade school out in the parking lot fighting kind of words. I'm going to call you names and stuff. You can come back with such strong facts to everything they're saying. When you don't even talk to me about prices, bro. We can just break down the entire Biden administration when he was sniffing your kids and falling upstairs, and why everything is the way it is right now. It takes time. People don't understand. Guys, it takes time to fix things. It just doesn't happen overnight. In 5 weeks, Trump's supposed to magically do all of these things with the economy. Like it takes time. Okay. Yeah. Get it in your heads.
Yeah. Hey, let me throw in one other thing, and I'm going to jump into this real quick. You're talking about liberals and how they'll fight you tooth and nail. Did you see, and I watched this week, Stephen A. Smith was on The View.
Yes,
I did
see that.
This is amazing. Joy Behar's like, well, the mandate. He's talking about mandates. They don't have the mandates. And Stephen A. Smith came out very eloquently, who, by the way, was one of their top 5, could be our Democratic nominee. And then he signs a 5-year, $100 million deal with ESPN, which pretty much put shat on that whole thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing he came back with. He says, I'm not going to agree with you. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to speak facts. Trump won the swing states, Black, Latinos, and young vote. 89% of the county shifted. The first time in 20 years, the Republicans won the popular vote. 20 years. Electoral college. And then he went back and reviewed it after she sat there and wanted to fight him on that. He says, I'm going to make it real simple for you. He got 89% of the counties, swing states, the electoral college, and he won a popular vote. So if you're going to argue over 1.5%, it's not the audience you want to hear. It's amazing to me that, number one, that show's still on air. Number two, that people cannot wrap their head around failure and defeat. Because once you wrap your head around failure and defeat, then you turn into someone like Gavin Newsom, who goes really, really close to the middle of the aisle. Let's be honest.
It forces your hand, because I can't say that they've quite realized how deep they are. And I said there's really one type of liberal right now where they're embedded so much in this ideology, this thought process, this movement, this woke movement. They're so deep in it, they just keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's why you have people like Gavin Newsom and these comedians like Stephen Colbert and people like Stephen A. being like, guys, this is not the move you want for us, okay? And then it's because of like, so let's get into this, because this is kind of another little peel off. If you start peeling the onion back and seeing what the Democrats are doing or why they're freaking out, let's look at the federal funding. Now, we're talking about the Department of Education that Trump's trying to dismantle to give back the power to the states. Federal funding stop for schools. This is cool. Trump put this out. So federal funding will stop for schools that promote illegal protests against America. And I kind of want to deep dive this one a little bit, but I think it's pretty great that if anyone, you're protesting against America, but you're pro Hamas, like, time to burn that to the ground, man. We don't need that anymore. I think that's a great move for the education system, but you see in schools, colleges, primarily, let's focus on colleges. A lot of the brainwashed students that come out very liberal is because of the racist and the critical race theory ideology that's coming out from a lot of these professors. You're starting to see it hemorrhage into different countries. South America, this is really cool. On the Tucker Carlson podcast, recently talked about, they call it a Xenia critical theory, where it's taught, no joke, taught that whites are inferior to other races. And you have guys like Robin DiAngelo, Ibram X. Kendi, and they literally say that our whiteness prevents us from connecting with humanity. And you're seeing this hemorrhage from the United States because it's all that the liberals can talk about: racism, racism, racism. And it's starting to bleed in other countries, and countries are really starting to own it. And this is crazy because, Charlie Kirk, he goes to different college campuses and he interviews.
And Rex.
He wrecks them, man. He came across this professor who, and I'm telling you guys how bad the education system is because of the DOE within colleges. Charlie Kirk met with this professor who is supposed to be a subject matter expert in World War I and World War II. And he says this professor starts to talk about how he's like, these students, they start to talk about, the Hitler fascistic topics, fascism. And he's like, Charlie, at what point do you see what's happening today to be synonymous with Trump's rise to power? Like, that's where people try to put it. They try to use these big words, like these overarching bullet point, these soundbite words like fascism, and try to pin it on Trump. And then, the question really is, for you guys knowing history, how about Trump's rise to power is the same as Winston Churchill's rise to power? And that there's more synonymous connectivity there than there is like the Weimar Germany rise, right? Like how can you compare Trump to Hitler? But they do. And then, they keep going on. And this guy is kind of like flabbergasted because Donald Trump was put into exile just like Winston Churchill else. And then he goes, who the Darnells are, right? This isn't a history class, guys, but this is interesting because you can see how quickly you can put how bad the DOE is. These are professors teaching your children. The guy knew nothing about the Darnells, basically nothing about Winston Churchill. And he goes on to talk about, like, this liberal professor goes on, he says, what about the cult-like personality of Donald Trump and the iconography of, like, for example, the MAGA hats, like the red and white?
Yeah.
Make him. And he's like, you're looking at this guy like you're equating mass genocide to a hat. It's like, Jeff, did you know that Hitler had a dog? That people that own dogs are going to commit mass genocide. Did you know that Hitler was also a vegetarian? So he's likely to just decimate an entire population of people. Like, that's the liberal argument. When they talk about fascism, they're talking about the color of our hats. And because he speaks a certain way, which is 99% in like exaggerating hyperbole, like it's just like that's how he speaks. But that's just a picture of what your kids are being taught. And that's why we're trying to dismantle the Department of Education. You have professors that speak on things that have no intellectual fortitude on any of these subjects.
Sure.
Mind blowing.
There's a hardback history book and a softback history book, right? A paperback. That's what we're going to go off of. But all you need to do is follow the money. I'm going to go back and say this again. It was announced this week that the Joe Biden administration earmarked and spent $490 million on DEI hiring and another $343 million. And I want you to explain this to me because I don't know what DEI programming is. That is a vast, very big word we're using right now, which goes back to the word code, which we said before, programming. So let's take that programming and let's do it intellectually right here between you and I. Programming to me means you get about 1,000 to 1,500 of your educators in a big conference room somewhere in this country and explain to them the things they need to teach, the things they don't want to hear, and the messaging that needs to go out from all of our teachers, whether it be secondary education, whether it be primary education, or whether it be flipping kindergarten. So we're spending $343 million on programming. Okay. It sounds to me DEI programming was Hitler's Nazi propaganda. Does it not sound a little bit very similar?
Yeah.
Whether you're reading from a computer or you're reading articles or they're programming you in a camp, right? The Hitler and the Nazi propaganda machine, right? Was all done through, we're going to sit here and we're going to tell you how to speak, how to act, how to walk, and how to talk. Seems a little bit like that. And by the way, we spent $343 million on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you listen to the liberals and how they kind of talk about DEI, it's projection, man. It's really easy how they project all of that into the Trump administration. But at the end of the day, like DEI is a racist movement. You talk about a fascistic movement, man. Look at Germans. Did the Germans have to have specific qualifications to be, to do or teach what they taught? No, they were just Germans who considered the Aryan race better than every other race. So when you talk about DEI is specifically bringing in all of these people who are unqualified to do certain things. Just talk about the FAA, for example. You bring in a bunch of individuals where they're, say they're anything but white, but they have zero qualifications within the FAA. Well, you're seeing repercussions of that with some of these plane crashes. And I think there's a lot of ties to that. That's a very small example, but it is a example that DEI, what is not DEI? Why DEI needs to go away is because everything needs to be merit-based. It's merit-based versus non-merit-based. If Jeff's a lawyer, did he go to law school? Does he have the credentials to show for it? What do all these things say? DEI needs to go. And that's why you're seeing all this from the DOE, and we need to rip it apart. Needs to go home. I think the Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn said it best. You're going to continue to hear this. She said, and I quote, "The more Democrats that condemn what Republicans are doing, the more they distance themselves from the American people. If they don't learn to shut up, they just don't stop." You said it last week. You're costing yourself the next 4, 8, 10, 12 years of having no influence, zero influence in government when you just bark like babies and hold up little signs that do nothing.
2 points I want to make. You talked about the FAA. Someone brought this up the other day, and I want to mention this to you, and let's think about this as a whole, and I'd love to see the comments for this. The FAA, every plane crash, every plane on fire, every engine on fire, every FedEx plane that goes in, everybody that almost runs into each other, it's mainstream national news right now.
Yeah.
It's mainstream. Because why? Because there's nothing else that they can talk about right now to debunk the DEI fiasco that it is. Trump wanted to get rid of it. Look at our air traffic controllers. Look at our pilots. They're not trained the proper way. You want them to do this and do that. It is mainstream media. It is the only magnet that they can put together that matches one side to the other, saying, you've ruined the FAA. You went with merit-based. We're out of people who are air traffic controllers, and now it's just mainstream. We could have a Cessna, and I'm sure there are a lot that go down. If there's some stats out there that show number of plane crashes or emergency landings out there, it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed at all. But I also want to go back to something you just said before, and I think this is very important. When the Republicans had control of the White House, that was Bush's 2 terms, right? During September 11th, and then you walk him up through his second term. Something needed to happen on the Democratic side to really make waves and to make us stop and think, including the folks on the Democratic side, because they really had no one going against Trump at the time either.
Yeah.
What did they choose? They choose Barack Obama and a New America.
Yeah.
They chose Barack Obama and a New America to completely carve a new path that Americans need to think. How do they need to think this new path? And what was that? You guys have been held down, pushed down. There's no equity and inclusion in this country anymore. And I'm here to stop that because I'm an African American.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I said the other day was, when is the last time before Obama was in office that you hear the word racism? I mean, I've seen 6 videos. I sent you all 6 of them, Jake. African American, hardworking people are out there like, what are we talking about right now?
I know.
Someone's taking control of my money, my hard-earned money, and exposing the real truth.
Yep.
And we want to use racism? Racism has nothing to do with the cost of goods all the way down to my tax dollars going to the Ukraine. Or for that matter, $490 million to DEI hiring and $343 million to programming.
Well, you
had to make waves, Jake. You had to make waves. And the only way it's going to happen again, Jake, because it's going to be a long run for the Republican, quote unquote Republicans.
Brandon Tatum, a massive conservative influencer, black gentleman, awesome dude, man, has incredible content, was on the Tommy Lauren podcast this week. And literally what you're talking about when it comes to racism, this whole movement of how he's speaking specifically for the black community because he's a black man. Yeah. Because Tommy Lauren's like, I would be embarrassed if this was like, if I was black and this was kind of the representation that I'm getting. And he's like, dude, and Brandon Tatum said, the black community, he goes, the community of melanin are some of the most embarrassing people on the planet today, coming from a black man that knows, he understands the landscape of America and how these things are, these agendas are continually being pushed and why the left is going so far left. It's like they're falling off the map. And then you have, and this ties in perfectly what you were saying. You had Alexandria Cortez come out this week, and this girl, I don't know how some of these people are representatives, bro. I need to get into politics. Prayerfully one day that'll happen.
You'll be rich as hell,
bro. I'm telling you, man. Yeah. You listen to Alexandria Ortega Cortez. She comes out and starts saying things like Republicans are they're very thin skinned, man. Their feelings are easily hurt. And I'm sitting there, and you should have heard Carl Higby's rebuttal to this, man. But he's so dead on. And I'll paraphrase some of this, but it's one of those arguments where the liberals are really good at name calling and saying things about us, but then you can rebut with like 10,000 things that the liberals are doing to show like, just like, let me give you facts, man. Like Democrats have mental breakdowns when you use the wrong pronoun. How many videos have you seen in that? They hyperventilate when they run out of almond milk.
Sure.
That's the Democrats today. They then hold a press conference if someone uses the wrong gender, like uses the wrong gender base. Liberals are screaming. Did you see like the liberals that were screaming at the lake after Trump won? They're all like lined up along this lake and they're screaming. They're like what? Like that's the Democratic Party. The whole Democratic Party. You think Republicans are sensitive? The Democratic Party is built on sensitivity.
Sure it is.
They're on inclusion, the feel-good niceness, while they sit there and also defund the police, double our taxes, and spend $8 million on transgender mice. That's the Democratic Party. The blue-haired, this is funny, Carl Higby said, blue-haired baristas tried to cancel anyone with calluses on their hands, men, because it was toxic masculinity. And then they show pictures, but AOC's crying at the border, this fake thing, and Republicans are sensitive. All I gotta say is keep it like this. Democrats, please keep it like this for the next 4 years because you're doing a great job for us, man. I mean, everything they do, every argument, every statement.
I read an article the other day which was extremely interesting, and I'll get it over to you for every year that this continues, it's going to add this nonsense that we're seeing. The address the other evening, a young man, DJ, we all know him very, very well, stands up and no one even stands up to clap for the kid. As long as this continues, it's adding 4 years onto the GOP's, Republican, if you will, status in the White House. So as long as they keep on going down this path, all they're doing is digging the ditch deeper and deeper and deeper for themselves. And it's to the point right now where someone in the Democratic Party, I don't know who that is. It's not Gavin Newsom, because Gavin Newsom pretty much agreed with everything Charlie Cook said the other day, including females or males playing in female sports, which really made him look bad, unless he's really trying to situate himself in the middle of the road. I don't think that guy has a snowball's chance in hell of doing anything on a national stage, especially being from California, amongst the other things. But someone better, there better be a savior somewhere. There better be a savior somewhere that USAID has funded already, like they did Obama, who groomed him to become the next president and gave him his 3 talking points. When you walk in, here are the 3 things you're going to talk about. We know what Obama did there. New America. You guys have been held down so long. You know, everybody counts, right? There better be someone who's going to come out, Jake, and it has to happen relatively soon from the Democratic Party, or they are finished. They are finished. That's the only thing you can say about that right now, especially when Stephen A. Smith, who said, "Oh, he's the next best thing." No, he's not. He just came on and made Joy Behar swallow her tongue.
Yeah, they gotta build momentum somehow. If they don't start building momentum, like, we're a steam train that has been moving at 100 miles already. But you understand where that all came from. The moment Biden took in office, he went backwards. They were going backwards, turned to an absolute dumpster fire, World War III base. You know, it's just a nightmare. And then what was Trump doing? And all the conservative influencers is they're building momentum. So the day Trump hits office, they're already going 100 miles an hour. There has to be some kind of momentum shift. And this bleeds us straight into the congressional speech, which we're about to talk about. And you just talked about it. This is the defining moment for Democrats. This is the Democratic Party. The Democrats couldn't stand for a 13-year-old terminal cancer. Well, I would say cancer survivor, but he has terminal cancer, brain cancer right now. They couldn't stand for a woman beaten and battered by a trans female, beaten by a male in female sports. They couldn't stand for survivors that were just released from terrorist organizations that Trump did within less than a month of being in office. This is your party. And, you know, I want to talk about DJ. I know we have some interesting opinions on DJ, the cancer survivor, but DJ Daniel. But, you know, MSNBC did an interesting cover. Is despicable, disgusting. But MSNBC came out and said that they hope Daniels doesn't commit suicide in reference to the January 6th. I'm like that's really what you got to say. Rachel Maddow, off her rocker, says, and I quote, "It's disgusting Trump made a spectacle out of passing a young man battling terminal brain." Like, you sit there, bro, and I lose my brain cell. Like, I'm saying, who in their right mind listens to that and it cognitively takes away? That's the messaging Trump did when he honored that little boy. Like, you want to talk about evil in its prime today, man, whether you're a spiritual person or not, the spiritual evil, the physical evil that is in this world from these people, they're on a whole different level, man. When you can't even stand for these battered and beaten people, man, mind-blowing, truly mind-blowing.
How mind-blowing is it that Rachel Maddow is the tip of the iceberg? Think about the people who are paying her and the people who are making decisions at MSNBC to sit there and they go to bed at night, lay their head on a pillow, and they say, you know what? She's good for TV.
Keep doing it. You know?
Absolutely disgusting. Here's one more. How about the police officer who took the rounds in Bethel? His wife and 2 daughters were there.
Yeah.
Representing their late father. Trump makes an announcement, points to them, acknowledges them. And you have one person looking at their phone, Pocahontas. She got upset because she got called Pocahontas.
It's Elizabeth Warren for any of you that are
And like I said this week, Elizabeth Warren. And everybody else holding up their popsicle sticks with a note card on it saying Musk is stealing. You didn't even bother to acknowledge him. You didn't even turn around to look. You didn't even turn
It's
around to
sick.
look. But you had your pink blazer on because you're all about females. You're all about protecting the female population. Oh, and by the way, 24 to 40 hours before that, y'all voted against it.
Dude, the contradictory is like Alexis Nungary, God bless her, mother of Jocelyn Nungary, a young girl, 12 years old, who was strangled and killed and sexually assaulted and left in a bayou in Houston. She was there. They couldn't stand for that. Stephanie Diller, this one kind of hits home too. Stephanie Diller, wife of Jonathan Diller, who was a New York Police Department police officer. He had asked this individual multiple times to get out of his car because for whatever reason, he was sensing there was some criminal activity going on. He was not wrong. They then drew a gun on Jonathan, shot him under his vest. He still disarmed the criminal and ended up succumbing to his wounds. But this criminal that he was trying to arrest has 20 prior arrests, and the Democratic New York leadership allowed this criminal back into the system, back on the streets, because the dude simply paid his bill. This is the Democratic Party, guys. And guess what? Even when Stephanie Diller was recognized and she was left with a 7-month-old baby to take care of, they couldn't stand it. Like, dude, I try not to go crazy, but you talk about how disrespectful you can be. Like, how much lower can you get? This is all happening at the congressional speech.
It's absolutely, it makes your stomach turn. I just remember when Nancy Pelosi was the speaker.
Ugh.
I remember her tearing up Trump's speech.
Oh, I know.
I fast forward to watching Nancy Pelosi sit there like an old 80-something-year-old woman, making sure her teeth stay in her mouth. And I'm making fun of her appearance at all. But to think about what she's put this country through, what a lot of these folks have put this country through. We have so many people in this country who are so appreciative of what Musk and Trump have done for the future of their families, for the future of their kids, for us, Jake, for what we see with our kids and moving upwards and onward, that you look in that right side of the crowd, and Trump said it best. I could cure the biggest disease. I could have the best budget balanced where we're in the green, and you guys wouldn't stand up, smile, or nod to me. Not to mention the old guy gets up with the cane. And by the way, be careful what you do there, because now they're going back in his little bit of history of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct, and that's getting thrown out there. So all these people who want to act like that, put the the auctioneering popsicle sticks in the air. I just want the folks in their jurisdiction where they live to remember that the next time they're on the ballot. Trump said it best. You'll never get reelected again. Oh, and by the way, the gentleman from Texas who put his cane and started yelling and he wants everybody to be impeached and all that.
Al Green.
$130,000 salaries worth $25.6 million.
Yeah. Look, man, when it comes to the congressional speech, you honor the office, not the person.
100% agree with that.
That's coming from Dr. Phil. He had Cenk Uygur. If you guys know Cenk Uygur, that guy is one of the most liberal guys on the planet. But even on the Dr. Phil show, they were both having this little conversation. And Dr. Phil said, you honor the office, not the person in it. He goes, do you agree that what Al Green did was off his rocker? Cenk actually agreed with him. Cenk Uygur said, yeah, I do. But then the liberals always have to go on about some kind of feel-ski kind of argument. And he goes, but the president has an obligation to reach out to the other side. And I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean he has to reach out to the other side? Everything he talks about unanimously is for both sides. You just have one side sitting with these little Post-it stickers and signs that are saying, I don't want to play ball, because you're just acting like children. Everything he does. And I'm listening to Cenk and I'm like, how is that your reaction? It's the same kind of garbage like Rachel Maddow and all these big time social media influencers. They come out with these little remarks, but the president has an obligation to reach out to. The president doesn't have to do jack. And by the way, he's doing more than that for both sides. You guys, just because he's not specifically hitting one topic that really massages your back, but really these are like holistic aggregate topics that is like unanimously and from just a jaw-dropping perspective affecting the American people. And I'm sitting here, but he has an obligation to what? to massage what, man? No, he doesn't.
Nowhere where he took the oath of office this past year was in the Capitol building. Does it say that he has to look out for political sides of the spectrum? It is for the American people. And if people don't get that through their heads, it's going to be a long 4 years for them. Because I don't know about you, but do Democrats pay taxes? They do. They do. They pay a lot of taxes, just like we all do, right? So if you're finding all this useless spending, is it really a political party? Or is it a political party argument for what's best for this country?
Yeah.
That's the most amazing thing to me. For not to turn around and look at the young man DJ, in the crowd, not to look at the police officer who survived, his family who's there, not even the clap, not even to acknowledge anything that's going on in your surroundings. That is the true symbol of what we have with the Democratic Party right now.
Stoic.
You don't like it, bury your hand in the sand.
Yeah.
Once all noise is done, you praise your head out of the sand, and you rinse and repeat everything you were taught to rinse and repeat about DEI and inclusion and racism and how Trump's a bad guy. You know what's even crazier, Jake? And I don't mean to go off topic here. 4 years ago, Trump was going to start World War III. We can't have him in office, man. He's going to blow up the entire world. Fast forward 6 years, Trump's trying to stop World War III, and we think it's bullshit.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's bad. It's bad when some of the most liberal comedians are now attacking their own party and saying stuff like this. Like if you watch the Stephen Colbert show, he says, well, it looks like the Democrats came out to fight with their little paddles. He goes, but let me tell you, that's exactly how you save democracy. Like that's it, man. Like let me show up with a paddle that says Elon stole. Like, what is this? The third grade? I painted my popsicle stick. He goes, by quietly dissenting or bidding on an antique tea set. He's like, that's what they're doing. They're bidding for a tea set. It's like and then he goes, I made my own sign. Guys, this is Stephen Colbert, super liberal. Can't stand the guy. He says, I made my own sign, holds up his own little paddle, and it says, try to do something. Like if the Democrats just tried to do something for the American people. And then Carolyn Levitt said it the best. Democrats have defined themselves. The press secretary loved her. She said, Democrats have defined themselves as the party that wants to put America last.
100%.
That's it. After that speech, guys, I don't know what else you need to hear. You really don't. You got to understand, unless there's someone that takes a drastic shift for the liberals, you're not going to see any more change. And that's why I think listening to what happened, all the things that Trump's doing is going to continue to do for the American people, how many people he saved. I mean, God bless the man, like truly, and his organization. I honestly, dude, I sit there and I pray for them nearly every single day for the leadership of this country, because we're in such a unique position where I think we talked about the party starting to change. They're trying to morph into something I think can be really beautiful for this country, but it's also a very critical time because while this is happening and with people's access to all types of media, it's really easy to distort some of the beautiful things that are actually happening.
I'll ask you again. Could you imagine if Elon Musk didn't purchase Twitter, that is now X, some years ago? I mean, could you imagine where we'd be as a society right now? Because we'd be all looking at influencers and what's on the nightly news. We would honestly, that would be our source of truth right now.
Yeah. I think everything was strategic. I don't think people give him, I think they know he's intelligent, except for AOC. She's off her rocker. I think that dude had a strategy in place, man. Deep down, I think there's things that he was working to, because I think deep down, he truly loves the American people. He loves this country based off of his actions alone and how much he sacrifices. But he's a billionaire, man. He makes all this money. He's,
sure.
Just park it, bro.
I'm going to give you. Go ahead.
Now, how many jobs has he provided? How much has he done for the space arena? Like how many things is he going to continue to do? He's buying up social networks. He's basically sacrificing all of his time, not taking a paycheck, and people like, yeah, he is. He has millions of dollars in contracts. Yeah, guess what? That were started by the Biden administration. What do you think he's doing, man? Like Tesla's in the tank, man. This dude is sacrificing himself for this country, and people are just like, whatever.
I don't know how quickly we're going to see this. And it reared a little bit of news this week. And this is interesting, the American landscape. When Biden was in office, he put together you cannot drill offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. I don't know if you saw this or not. Okay. So Trump's like, okay, we can't drill in the Gulf of Mexico offshore for oil. So I'm just going to go ahead and change the name to the Gulf of America. And here we are, right? We said it from the first time we started talking about this in the new administration. There is chess games going on. And Trump's, with his leadership, with his cabinet, with the folks he surrounds himself with, while the Democrats are just setting up a checkers board.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, they are 3 to 4 steps ahead of everyone right now. Mm-hmm. Everyone.
Well, they're dismantling the system so quickly that there's no way they can recover. That's why. I mean, they're finding all this loose money. You're having idiots like Al Green stand up and say this ridiculous. They're hyper exposing themselves without really understanding that's what they're doing. And by pushing back so strong, it's not going to get any better. So the real question you have to ask is what's next? Who's next? Or what's next for the Democrats? Is it Gavin Newsom? Is he the guy, after watching him on the Charlie Kirk, that little podcast back and forth? I think he was actually in California at Gavin Newsom's place because Gavin Newsom was talking about his teenager, 13-year-old.
Who loves him.
Who loves Charlie Kirk. He's like, is Charlie going to be there? And what did Gavin, he said, he goes, so Charlie, I'm going to tell you something. You're making a dent. That's huge on a 13-year-old. And see, that is the generation you're targeting, right? Because I think the generation in college right now that you're seeing, there are great conservatives out there. But at some of these really liberal schools, you just see the schools that Charlie goes to, and they're just a dumpster fire. But interesting to see. I don't think, at least now, but they are talking about, we talk about what's next for Democrats. Is Gavin Newsom that guy in 2028? But then he was asked by Charlie Kirk about having the trans athletes, specifically in female sports. And he's like, he was trying to hit him. He's like, but what do you think? Like, what? Should men be in female sports? Liberals, he does give an answer to keep more on the moderate side. He said, no, he doesn't think they should. But then he kind of gave this word salad that came after. But I believe that we also need to be sensitive to, I'm like, bro, we need to be sensitive to everybody. We need to take care of but they have to put this, what I call tunnel vision on a specific agenda to slam it down your throat, or like keep this 1% topic in like and 99% of everyone's view. So it's like, yeah, man, just say you disagree with it and actually do something about it. Well, but Gavin Newsom, I don't know, man.
I think from Gavin Newsom, his best opportunity to win the White House would have been him in place of Harris and that ticket. I do, because now they're like, Waltz is going to run. Could you imagine?
Oh my God, I saw that.
Let me go back to Newsom real quick. I have evidence to support this. Gavin Newsom, I know, has lost his party when he loses his state, because in his state's a lot of very powerful, politically driven entertainers. When you start seeing singers, comedians, you talked about entertainers, but you start seeing what Pitbull said at a concert. Hey, if you want to say something about the United States and you want to kill on the United States and everything you want to say, then get out of this country. You're going to feel the wrath of what this country really meant to you. Then you start seeing what Cat Williams says. He gets into it. Someone says Mexico and he loses his mind. You're starting to see some influential people in California in that circle who are starting to fragment out of that circle. And when they start fragmenting out of that circle, you start thinking why. And the why is this. That wildfire that went through California that Gavin Newsom had no control over, had no idea what to do as a leader. Put that in broad scope and put that within 50 states and see how good Gavin Newsom would be. Yeah. That is the most remarkable thing. You don't have to look and ask the question anymore. Is Gavin Newsom, is he the next? Is he on deck, or is he in the hole for the Democratic Party? No, I think that ship has sailed for him. And that's exactly why he's going to be more moderate right there. Hell, probably because he sits at home and eats dinner with his family, including his son who likes Charlie Cook, and says, you know what? I agree with him too, but I got to put on this facade in front of my constituents in California.
That's the key.
Answer to Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, at some point you're going to say, it doesn't matter how many Beyoncés, Eminems, and Cardi B's you get up on a stage to represent some liberal agenda. It's not going to matter anymore. Like, the wave is too strong. People call the red wave, whatever. No, bro. But I think the influence is way more than people want to give it credit for. I'll tell you who's not ready to be the president here. Guys, we'll wrap up on this one. Jasmine Crockett, representative from the Texas 30th district. This chick, man, she's starting to get a lot of social media exposure, but she's embarrassing her own party worse than I've ever seen. She came out with this humiliating music video where she's dropping F-bombs, man. F this, F that. She's doing all these like really odd moves in her dance. And like, this is after the joint session in Congress. Jasmine says her people built this mother effort. Basically saying in context that her people built America. We built this mother effer. And I'm sitting there like, dude, she swears constantly. She's doing these grotesque like dance gestures. You know, as a representative of the American people, congratulations, the 30th district in Texas. That's what you voted for, man. Like, it's sick. And I talked about the Tommy Lauren thing, and Brandon Tatum, as a black conservative representative, said, and I quote, "The people of melanin are probably some of the worst embarrassing people on planet Earth today. A woman who has a degree and represents constituency is this absurd and ghetto." Like, that's the picture he wants to promote. He goes, "You trying to tell me that you're trying to be Kendrick Lamar in public office? How about doing your job? Like, just do your job and shut your mouth. We don't need F-bombs and all these, like, we don't need you to dry hump the camera when you're sitting there in whatever office you're working in." I'll tell you right now, Jasmine Crockett, you're probably not it. You know what I mean?
And neither was the girl who did the rebuttal, if you will, after the address the other night.
Yeah.
You know, I was CIA, I did all this and all that. She started off as, you know, what's good for the country, pretty middle of the road. And then it's almost like her speech got caught. And she's like, well, I really can't say anything about how much money we're saving. I really can't say anything about what we're trying to do in the Ukraine. So I'm just going to start blasting on old hyperbole, man. I'm just going to bring up some of the old stuff that we've talked about and regurgitate that. I'm going to go back to Crockett real quick. Okay. Who is she trying to appease? Who is she trying to appease? Who is she trying to, oh, this girl's cool, man. She's one of us. Because I'm telling you something right now. That whole population from Pitbull on down, from entertainers and gangsta rap and West Coast, East Coast, it has dried up. And they will dry you up quickly in the state of Texas.
Bro, she's 43.
Yeah. Acting like,
who is she appeasing to? What? The 17, 18-year-old young 20-year-olds?
Right.
What?
Right. We just heard that Trump completely dominated the vote, right? So who are you trying to appeal to down there in Texas doing the things that you're doing? Governor Walz? I mean, he's like, well, you know what? Maybe I'm going to give it a run. That's where you know you have and I say this, and I not by any stretch, you knew you had to put someone up there against Obama when you rolled out. Was it McCain and our girl from Alaska, Palin?
Yeah.
You're just kind of rolling someone up there as a scapegoat to get through 4 years at that point.
Yeah, that's it, man.
Yeah. So
whatever. Well, guys, God bless America. We hope you enjoyed the show today. I mean, we hit so much that's going on. It seems every week, just vomiting information, a lot of great things happening in America, guys. And truly, when we say this, God bless America, man. I think we're heading in a great direction. You guys need to stay up to speed on everything, what's going on. Me and Mitch, we're going to be doing that for you guys every week at the Jake and Mitch show. Like I said earlier, guys, if you like the show, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, share this podcast, spread the word, guys, and we're going to keep things going for you until next week, guys. We're out of here.
Stay strong.
Jake and Mitch.